Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're looking at hiring trends in today's tech market, what's driving hiring, what positions are most in demand, and what you can do to boost your employment profile as a tech professional. To discuss that, I'm joined by Sunny Ackerman, President of the Americas for SThree, which is a top global tech recruiter. Sunny, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, James, for having me.
So I think there's so much buzz about tech hiring and hiring in general these days. We often hear about employers can't find the workers that they need. It's a very tight labor market. As you survey the tech hiring market, what's driving tech this year as you see it?
Yeah, tech in general has been, it's an interesting industry because it's been a bit of a resilient industry, recession-proof, I would say. There's a number of things happening in a number of clients right now in terms of cloud recruitment. We do a lot of work within the DevOps area, cybersecurity, data science, and so increasing demand, I would say, in all sectors. And with work becoming, more remote over the past couple of years, we're seeing definitely an increase in demand in IT.
Mhm. What about, I'm beginning to hear headlines of a slowdown in tech hiring. I think it was even this morning, Elon Musk said, I feel super bad, but I'm going to need to cut 10% of the jobs. Are you seeing small signs of we don't want to hire as much in the tech world?
We're hearing rumblings of contraction of the IT market, with some companies reporting some tech layoffs and hiring freezes. I mean, you've seen that with organizations like Uber and Meta and Peloton, several coming out. I think despite some of the headwinds today and rising inflation and interest rates, supply chain, number of things, war in Ukraine, lockdowns in China, I think the IT staffing thus far is fairly resilient. In fact, SThree, our organization, has made record placements in several STEM and tech fields, particularly IT and engineering, over the past 6 months. So the big one we're seeing is wage inflation is a hot topic in the recent months. About several companies that we've been talking to are seeing increasing in bill rate trends, and candidates are becoming more demanding of higher pay as well. But we are not seeing that slow down as of yet.
I guess that's good news.
Yeah.
It seems like in terms of the wage inflation, obviously it's the workers are quite happy with that. The management is not quite so happy. Is there a side that's winning in that particular battle?
I would say that the candidates still have a bit of an upper hand. I mean, if the skills are needed in particular client sites and particular client demands, I mean, that is still a candidate-driven market. And so, we're seeing rise in salaries and total compensation for most roles, but specifically in IT. So I would say candidates do still have an upper hand if they have specifically specialized skills that are in quite demand, like data science.
Hmm. What about the world of technology? Sometimes it's been criticized, at least in years past, in terms of not doing as well in terms of diversity, inclusion, and gender equality. What's your sense of how that's going these days?
I would say we clearly have work to do. Women only make up, women make up 48% of the US workers, and yet only 27% of STEM workers are female, according to some of the latest US Census data that we have. So, I think and when you get up through organizations, the lack of representation at the executive level is the most stark as well. So there's definitely work to be done in those particular areas. And, when we think about tech in particular, it's interesting. McKinsey just did a recent survey on this. They said, diverse workforce is about 36% more likely to achieve financial metrics and financially outperform their peers. And tech is such an interesting one because it's built for diversity. There's a need for constant innovation demands and gaining variety of perspective and ideas. And so a diverse workforce inherently provides diversity of thought and ideation. So, I think tech in particular is an area that can continue to do a lot of work around that.
I went to this conference recently here in San Francisco. It was a Women Impact Tech conference, and it was all women, and they're talking about women in technology. And I think it's a big discussion about why. I mean, the figure you quoted was quoted often at that event, the 27%, and it's a big question, I guess. Why is it that? Is it a legacy sexism? Is it something else? Why do you think the figure is so low?
I think when you look up through some of the senior level leadership ranks, there's still, quite a bit of lack of diversity at those levels. And I think there's organizations that can do, certain things to look at, bringing that into their business around mentoring programs. I mean, I think there's things around, we've been implementing kind of, certain things around, diverse decision-making in terms of teams, and really thinking more broadly in terms of how we access this type of talent, and really thinking about where are some of the things that we can do as a business to continue to propel that forward.
So what advice would you give to companies if they want to increase the diversity of their workforce? What steps can they take?
There's a number of things, strategies to attract and retain diverse talent. One of the areas is, implicit bias training, is often unseen roadblock that prevents diverse candidates from being considered or achieving kind of upward mobility. Training that, staff can identify and counteract implicit bias is a good first step in terms of, learning and development teams. Balance the diverse decision-making teams. I think there's greater diversity in hiring and management teams is correlated with higher numbers of female and minority candidates. So really looking at your overall team makeup. And I mentioned, mentoring programs, and considering that STEM workplace may not be as welcoming at this point, females and minorities, mentoring programs can aid in employee retention, such as veteran, female engineers can provide important career advice and guidance to new hires. So that's a big one. And lastly, I'd hit upon the work-life balance. I mean, I think it's a topic that people always kind of throw around, but women are more likely than men to juggle caregiving responsibility on top of careers and benefit from, family-friendly work policies. And so I think a lot of organizations should be looking at that if they're not today.
Hmm. And it seems like the tech market in particular has struggled with the idea of a work-life balance. It's implicit in some of those tech companies. You're going to work more than 40 hours if you're going to work for us.
That's correct, but I think more and more organizations are starting to recognize that as a potential, barrier to preventing, retention within their own workforce of the individuals they have, but also attracting more, diverse pools of talent. So I think there's definitely more of a increase in that balance happening, but you still see organizations that are still pressing the envelope on that.
Mm-hmm. So say that there's a tech professional out there, and he or she wants to improve their employment opportunities. I know it's a big, broad question. It probably depends on the individual, obviously. But if you give some general advice, what can tech professionals do to improve their employment opportunities?
I think it's interesting if you're looking for a tech job or you're looking to improve your opportunities in tech. In tech, progress never stops. I say there's always a good, great new tool or program language to master. And I think so the things that you want to make sure of is that you're a continuous learner, that you're always kind of increasingly upping your skills and making sure that, you're developing a growth mindset. Just like every new program that you get under your belt will make it easier to master the next one. So continuing to have that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say connect with your community. I mean, I think whether you're in tech or want to enter tech, over 70% of the jobs many times are not advertised. And so strong networks are really around hidden jobs before candidates find them. And there's a powerful online community platform out there for networking, for in-person events, for connecting and skilling up. So there's a number of different things that I think tech professionals can do, as well as individuals that want to enter tech.
I'm wondering if it's slightly more difficult to network these days. Obviously, we're coming past COVID, but the in-person events aren't quite as there as they used to be. So maybe it's harder to be networking in this world of Zoom. Do you sense that?
I do, and I think there's been, with the remote working, I think there's more opportunities now around online communities. We've seen definitely a pickup around that in terms of just more tools out there, around things like, check out sites like Meetup and search for topics that interest you, from like Python to HTML. There's different meetups in different areas that you can tap into, whether that be online or in person. So I think there's probably more opportunity now for people because there's more options online, as well as still, organizations doing things in person as well.
Do you sense that the employers have sort of broken down and said, hey, we know that the tech professionals want to work from home and we might be resistant to that, but we're going to go ahead and we know we need to do that. Is that battle been won, or the tech companies still resisting the work from home?
I think many of the tech companies that we work with are allowing employees to work remotely. It depends on the type of work that they're doing. There's some potential positions that they need to be on site for, but I think there's definitely more of an openness now around remote work or even hybrid work. Our work environment today is that we're hybrid, so we have people going into the offices, potentially 1 to 2 days a week, and they're calling it hybrid with a purpose. So when they do go in, they're using it for connectivity, for community, for coaching. And so it's a different way in which the offices are being used. And I think tech professionals are seeing the same thing in many of the clients that they're working for, where they're utilizing remote as well as potentially doing hybrid.
Interesting. Well, let's look ahead to the future of tech hiring. And we've talked about networking a little bit. I know that a lot of hiring in tech and outside of tech is driven by algorithms. The resume is fed into a machine, and it's, the algorithms say yes or no. Then again, of course, personal connection plays a big role. How will this balance change in the years ahead? What's your view on that?
Interesting question. I would say recruiting at its core is about people, and tech hiring at its core is about people. So technology provides recruiters more time to focus on relationship building, and more recruiters are becoming more strategic advisors to hiring companies, providing advice around insights, competitor intelligence. But I think the technology replacing that is something that I am not seeing in the business necessarily. It's allowing recruiters and individuals that are having to place people into tech jobs being more efficient and effective in their roles that they're in. And it's really interesting when you think about things like implicit or eliminating or introducing bias is a laundry list of reasons why unconscious bias in hiring hurts companies. Mm-hmm. And so if there's, different ways in which technology could potentially support businesses to remove unconscious bias by eliminating anything from resumes that might identify gender or race, mm-hmm. they can also help bring in specific bias into recruitment process. So for example, if a company's looks at their workforce and they realize they have predominantly male developers, they can use technology to target female developers in the recruitment process. So I think overall technology has been able to augment and complement the work that tech hiring is making to be able to allow people to be able to place people more quickly, but in jobs more readily as well.
Mm-hmm. Anything else about the future of tech hiring? I know that I talked about in terms of the algorithm, but just in general sense, if we're say 3 or 4 years downstream, what will tech hiring look like then?
I think continued demand of the business. I think there's a lot of opportunity for potential companies and organizations like ours looking at ways that we can skill up individuals into tech and get more people into tech. And the demand is going to be continuously there, and it's being able to access the supply and the talent. So a lot of organizations looking at individuals that might want an opportunity to get into tech and give them different training around that. So I think those are potential areas that we'll see growth in as well. More employees getting into technology through having access to tools and resources and certification through the companies that they're with or organizations they want to be a part of.
Do you mean employees that are sort of, they're still learning about technology, so they would learn about it to get into it, or are these more experienced professionals?
I would say people that want to get into technology, potentially looking at a potential access point for them to be able to enter technology, because the demand is going to be still pretty significant. And I think, the challenge that which many companies have is finding the talent. So how do we potentially continue to help people get into technology through, upskilling and reskilling as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the upskilling, I think, is a big part of that picture. So I think it's interesting, Sunny. Obviously, you really know tech hiring well. I'd love to get a sense of your own personal journey. You've grown up in a male-dominated industry. What have you learned as you've gone through?
I'd say my rise in recruitment, specifically in STEM recruitment, has always been one of the very few, if any, women at the table. Being a woman in a male-dominated field has its challenges, but it's molded me into a confident leader that I am today. And I knew when I first started in the industry that I was going to have to work harder than my male colleagues to be recognized in this field. And so I think, when I look back, my experiences have taught me a few things. First, establish credibility early on in your career. We were all hired to perform a job, so go out and perform that job and carry your weight. Never ask anyone to do something that you would not be willing to do yourself. And I think the next piece of advice that's really important is to pay it forward, and something that I really believe in doing throughout my career. I believe that women supporting women is a very important concept. We have a duty and responsibility to be positive role models and mentors, and also help that next generation of leaders learn and grow. And then sometimes it means putting other women in positions of authority to grant them the same opportunities. And I've had to make that for myself so they can find their own career paths. So those are some of the things that I would reflect back and provide advice to people looking at that.
That's fascinating. Among that, is there something in particular that you think is deeply challenging among that, or what's your sense?
I would say, I would say there's just less women and individuals at the table to be able to kind of provide sometimes those. So I think sometimes just advocating, having women and men working together and having allyship in place, and allowing women to be in positions of authority to grant them the same opportunities will allow more women to have a seat at the table, which will be important to that particular concept.
Mm-hmm. Sunny, that's a lot of good stuff. Anything you want to add about tech hiring? It's a fascinating area. I know you're really close to it.
No, I think it's exciting space to be in. I think there's a big opportunity for a lot of organizations like SThree, as well as, a lot of organizations globally to really, think about the types of people that they're bringing into their organizations and really challenge some of the hiring profiles and the hiring, traction tools that they're using to really look at that diversity and, inclusiveness within the workforce they have. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to tap into more of a broader talent pool and challenge organizations to be looking at that.
Yeah, that's important, definitely. Sadie, I think you said it. Thank you so much for sharing your insight today. It was great.
Thank you, James, so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.